Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as Carter Lowe's voice, crisp and authoritative, detailed the audit's findings over the phone. The lush greenery of her new office's park view blurred into a meaningless smear. "The financial trail is a disaster, Maya," Carter said, the rustle of papers audible. Diana Lockhart's month-long wellness retreat in Bali coincided with a series of unauthorized transfers from the Community Outreach Fund. The invoices she submitted for reimbursement are for venues that don't exist. Maya's mouth was dry, and Vivian Grant. A beat of silence. Vivian is more careful. She's claiming full ignorance, painting Diana as a rogue agent. But the audit shows a pattern of inflated salaries and ghost vendor payments going back years. The board is mortified and deeply in your debt. The word debt felt cold. This wasn't about debt. It was about the clients who'd been denied essential services because funds were tight. It was about the young single mother she'd had to turn away from a housing aid program the very week Vivian had bragged about her new luxury sedan. "What happens now?" Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Now," Carter sighed, a sound of weary resolution, "we confront them. A special board meeting has been convened for Friday. Diana is cutting her retreat short. We've requested her immediate return. Vivian, of course, is already preparing her defense." He paused. "Maya, we need you there. Your first-hand account of the operational chaos, the fund diversion you witnessed on the ground. It's the human context the spreadsheets can't show. It's what will make the board understand this wasn't just accounting errors, it was a betrayal of trust." A wave of nausea washed over her. The thought of being back in that boardroom under the glacial gaze of Vivian Grant made her skin crawl. She could still hear Vivian's voice, dripping with faux concern during that horrible hour-long meeting. "Maya, we all have personal struggles, but you must separate them from your professional output. Your lack of focus is letting our families down." All while Maya was drowning in the silent grief of her third miscarriage. "I don't know if I can," she confessed. "I understand the trauma," Carter replied, his tone softening. "But this is your chance to close that chapter, not with a resignation letter, but with the truth. You can ensure no other employee, no other family goes through what you did. Think about it. The meeting is at 10 a.m. After hanging up, Maya sat motionless. The ghost of her old life had just walked back in. She opened the bottom drawer of her desk, pushing past files to a small, framed photo tucked away. It was of her and her old team at the agency's annual picnic, smiling under a summer sun, believing they were making a difference. Vivian and Diana were in the background, their smiles looking like grimaces now. Her phone buzzed. A text from her former colleague, Sasha, who was still at the agency. "Rumor tsunami here. Diana's coming back. Vivian's door is sealed shut all day. People are scared. Some are hopeful. Did you have something to do with this?" Maya didn't reply. Her finger hovered over the screen. If she stepped back into that lion's den, there would be no anonymity. She would become a target not just for Vivian and Diana, but for anyone loyal to them. Yet, if she stayed silent, the cycle would simply repeat. Vivian might even survive this, pinning everything on Diana and continue her reign of toxic, credit-stealing mediocrity. She looked at the photo again, at the hopeful face of her past self. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, she picked up her phone and texted Carter Lowe. "I'll be there. Send me the details." The decision was made. But as she prepared to face the women who had tried to break her, a chilling thought emerged. Vivian Grant didn't get to where she was by playing fair. A public board meeting was one thing. What would she do in the shadows to protect her empire before Friday arrived? The night before the meeting, Maya's personal email pings with an anonymous message. It contains a single grainy security camera screenshot from her old agency's parking lot, dated from her final week there. It shows her head bowed, sitting in her car. The subject line reads, "We know about the missing client file. Be careful what you say tomorrow." A file she had no memory of losing. The game had just shifted from exposing corruption to surviving a frame-up. The air in the charity's server room was cold and hummed with a relentless electric tension that matched Leo Chen's frayed nerves. Before him, the custom ticketing system, His magnum opus, now mangled by Serena Blake's premature sign-off, flashed error messages like a distress beacon. The third-party support portal was grayed out. "Account authorization revoked," the screen stated bluntly. Serena had pulled the plug, leaving him in digital darkness. Gabriel, his only ally at the support company, had messaged him on a personal app an hour ago. "Leo, man, I'm locked out too. Her authorization is the only one that works now. She's saying you're rogue, operating against charity policy. I'm sorry." Rogue for trying to fix the very system she'd gutted. A soft knock at the server room door made him jump. Sloane Park from accounting slipped in, her eyes wide with shared panic. "Leo, the director's meeting Serena scheduled. It's not next week. It's tomorrow at 9 a.m. She moved it up. I saw the calendar update." Ice flooded Leo's veins. "Tomorrow, but the system is a disaster," Sloane finished, her voice low. "And that's exactly how she wants it. She's prepping the narrative right now. I just passed her in the hall with James from PR. She was saying, we'll have to be transparent about the operational delays caused by the technical team's initial missteps. She was talking about you, Leo. She's going to feed you to the wolves." The trap was sprung. He had evidence, yes. A folder of printed emails in his bag proving her sabotage, her directives to delay her false reports. But it was a historian's proof, a story of the past. Tomorrow the directors would want to see the future, a functioning website, and all they would see was a broken machine with him standing beside it, holding a stack of paper excuses. He had one night. "I need access," Leo whispered, more to himself than to Sloane. "I need to get the development server back online, at least to show a prototype path." "She changed all the admin passwords," Sloane said. "Everything flows through her." Leo's eyes swept over the server racks, the blinking lights, the tangled cables. His gaze snagged on a small, unassuming black box mounted near the ceiling, the network switch for the office's security cameras. A system installed years before Serena's time. A system maintained by a different outsourced vendor. A system on a completely separate network segment. An idea, wild and dangerous, flickered to life. "She controls the charity's digital kingdom," Leo said slowly. "But what about the physical one?" "What do you mean?" "The board needs to see the truth. If I can't show them a working system, maybe I can show them the architect breaking it." He explained his plan in a rushed, hushed tone. It was a risk that could end his career entirely if it backfired. Sloane listened, her initial horror shifting to grim determination. "I can get you the old building blueprints from the facility's archive," she said, "and I can create a distraction in the accounting server at 8 p.m. sharp. It'll send an automated alert to her email. She never ignores those." For the first time in months, Leo felt a spark that wasn't anger or despair. It was purpose. This wasn't just about defense anymore, it was a counterstrike. At 7:58 p.m., under the guise of working late, Leo accessed the dusty facilities closet. At 8:00 p.m. precisely, Sloane, server anomaly alert would ping on Serena's laptop. At 8:02 p.m., according to her meticulous routine captured in 100 calendar invites, Serena would be in the main office kitchen making her evening herbal tea. That gave him a window. At 8:05 p.m., hidden in the plastic ceiling crawl space above the main office hallway, Leo held his breath. Below him, he heard the sharp click of Serena's heels leaving the kitchen, returning to her office. Right on schedule. His target was the camera above her office door. It was the only one with a direct line of sight into her workspace, a relic from a previous theft investigation. Working silently in the dim, dusty space, he located the camera's data cable. With a delicate, practiced motion, he didn't disconnect it. He tapped it, splicing in a small, wireless transmitter he'd cobbled together from spare parts. The feed would now broadcast to a private, encrypted cloud storage, while still functioning normally for the security monitor. He dropped back into the server room just as his phone vibrated. A text from Sloane. "She took the bait, was in the server logs for 10 mins, you're clear." He'd done it, Now he needed her to take the final, damning step. He opened his email and, with deliberate, clumsy phrasing, sent a desperate plea to Serena. "Serena, the system is collapsing without support access. I cannot fix the core database errors. We need to reinstate Gabriel's credentials or the demo tomorrow will be an utter failure." Leo. It was bait. He needed her to respond in writing to give an order that would prove her deliberate sabotage. He stared at his inbox, waiting. 5 minutes. 10. Her reply was succinct. "The failures are a result of your foundational errors, Leo. The third-party contract is terminated due to non-performance. You will present the system as is tomorrow and answer for the technical debt. Do not contact the vendor again." Leo had the evidence, but as he saved the email, a new notification popped up, an alert from his newly hijacked camera feed. The silent video showed Serena in her office. She wasn't alone. Jackson Cole from development was with her, leaning casually against her desk. Serena slid a thick envelope across the surface to him. Jackson smiled, pocketed it, and said something that made Serena nod in cold satisfaction. Leo's blood ran cold. He wasn't just fighting a malicious boss. He was up against a conspiracy, and Jackson was the mole inside the directors' meeting. The frozen image on Leo's screen, Serena's cool smile, Jackson's conspiratorial nod, the envelope burned itself into his vision. The grievance folder full of printed emails suddenly felt naive, like bringing a toy sword to a gunfight. This wasn't just about stolen credit, it was a coordinated takedown. His phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Sloan. "Did you see it? The 9 a.m. meeting agenda just went out. Jackson is presenting the technical post-mortem right after Serena's project overview." Of course, they had structured the execution. Serena would paint the bleak picture of failure, and Jackson, the trusted insider from a separate department, would deliver the independent, technical analysis confirming her narrative. Leo would be the scapegoat, his defense looking like the desperate lies of a guilty man. He had to pivot fast. The printed emails were still crucial, but they were the what. The video was the who and the why. But it was illegally obtained, a fireable offense itself. He couldn't bring it to HR. He needed to weaponize the knowledge, not the footage. An idea formed, fragile and risky. It relied on Serena's arrogance and Jackson's self-preservation. At 8:55 a.m., the boardroom was a theater of tension. 6 directors sat around the polished mahogany table. Serena, impeccably dressed in a steel gray suit, stood at the head, a portrait of disappointed leadership. Jackson sat to her right, fiddling with a presentation clicker. Leo took the lone seat at the far end, facing them all, his folder on the table. "Let's begin," said Eleanor Vance, the board chair. "Serena, you requested this urgent review." "Thank you, Eleanor," Serena began, her voice smooth as oil. "It's with deep regret that I must report a critical failure in our digital transformation project. Despite significant investment, the ticketing system is non-functional. The go-live has caused operational chaos." She presented slides of cherry-picked error logs and angry user emails. "The root cause," she continued, her gaze landing on Leo like a weight, "was a fundamental lack of technical rigor and project management in the initial phases, compounded by a refusal to heed guidance." It was a masterclass in blame shifting. The directors' faces grew stern. "Jackson," Serena said, yielding the floor, "your independent assessment." Jackson cleared his throat, avoiding Leo's eyes. He brought up complex network diagrams. "The system architecture is flawed at its core. Inefficient queries, poor database design. It's a house of cards. Frankly, it's unsalvageable without a full rebuild." He used technical jargon to create a smokescreen of inevitability. The directors, non-technical, nodded gravely. Eleanor Vance turned to Leo. "Mr. Chen, this is a grave situation. What is your response?" Leo took a steadying breath. He opened his folder. "My response is that this is a narrative, not an analysis, and I have the proof." He began distributing copies of his printed email chain, starting with the November thread where Serena ordered him not to reply to directors. "This shows the deliberate stalling of communication," he explained, his voice gaining strength. He showed the email where she secretly removed him from the project. This shows the removal of the lead developer without cause or notification. The directors shuffled the pages, murmuring. Serena's mask slipped for a microsecond, revealing icy fury. Those are out of context, and they don't change the technical reality Jackson just outlined. But they change the cause, Leo countered. He then looked directly at Jackson. Jackson, your analysis is fascinating, especially the part about the irreversible database corruption. Could you specify which tables are corrupted? I'd like to attempt a recovery on the backup server this afternoon. Jackson froze. He'd been fed talking points, not technical details. The user transaction tables, he stammered. The schema is a mess. Interesting, Leo said, pulling out another sheet. Because the system doesn't have user transaction tables. It uses a flat file log system for transactions per the original spec you approved. The database only holds static event data. He let the silence hang heavy and accusatory. It seems your independent assessment is based on a fictional system, or perhaps, Leo said, turning his gaze to Serena, on a fabricated brief. The room erupted. Eleanor Vance held up a hand. This is a serious allegation, Mr. Chen. It is, Leo agreed. He then played his final card, speaking calmly but clearly. I also have reason to believe there has been a deliberate effort to subvert this meeting through undisclosed incentives. He didn't look at Jackson, but the man paled. I suggest the board's audit committee review all financial authorizations signed by Ms. Blake in the last quarter, particularly any discretionary bonuses or vendor payments to external consultants. He was describing the envelope without nomming it. Jackson's bravado shattered. Now wait a minute, I was just providing a high level. Enough, Serena cut in, her voice a whip crack, but the damage was done. The director's eyes were no longer confused, they were sharp, suspicious. The flawless narrative had cracked. Eleanor Vance's expression was granite. This meeting is adjourned. Jackson, you are excused. Serena, Leo, you will both remain. We are calling an HR and the head of internal audit immediately. As Jackson slunk out defeated, Serena shot Leo a look of pure, unadulterated venom. Later in the hallway, his phone buzzed. It was Gabriel, the support tech. Leo, man, I just got a crazy call from a private number. Someone offering me a year's salary to say you pressured me into signing off on faulty code months ago. They said they'd ruin me if I didn't. This isn't over. Serena wasn't just fighting back. She was launching a scorched earth counterattack, aiming to burn every bridge around him. Gabriel's text was a tripwire in the dark. Serena wasn't just defending. She was orchestrating a counter-narrative so devastating it would render Leo's evidence meaningless. If she could paint him as the incompetent who had coerced a vendor into fraud, his emails would look like the manipulative cover-up of a guilty man. His credibility would evaporate. The emergency HR and audit meeting was a tense procedural fog. Leo reiterated his claims. Serena, now a vision of wounded professionalism, called his allegations a tragic attempt to deflect from his own catastrophic failure. She denied everything with polished vagueness. The session ended with a mandate for a full, formal investigation. It was a stalemate, but it bought Serena time Leo knew she would use to forge her reality. Back at his desk, the office was a graveyard of averted eyes. Serena's poison was already in the air. He had to move faster. The digital hunt was no longer about defense. It was about survival. He started with the envelope. The video was useless as legal evidence, but it was a map. Why pay Jackson? Jackson had access to the development department's server, which handled pre-launch testing. A server Leo had never touched. Using the admin credentials he'd secretly restored during his night in the crawl space, a backup set the system remembered, Leo ghosted into the dev server's logs. He filtered for the date range just before the disastrous go-live. His breath hitched. There, buried in thousands of entries, was a series of automated code commits under Jackson's ID. But the commit messages were generic. Stability patches, database optimization. Leo cross-referenced the timestamps with his own project management log. Jackson's Patches were applied on April 2nd and 3rd, after Serena had forced the final sign-off on April 1st, but before the system went live to the public on April 4th. He had tampered with a supposedly locked system. Heart-pounding, Leo pulled the actual code changes. It wasn't optimization. It was sabotage. Jackson had inserted a cascade of time-delayed fail-safes into the database connection protocols. They were designed to trigger under specific user loads, simulating critical hardware failure and corrupting data packets. It was digital arson with a fuse set to burn for days. This was the technical reality Jackson had presented. He had engineered the failure he was hired to diagnose. Leo meticulously captured screenshots, logged the file paths, and saved the corrupted code snippets. This was the smoking gun, but it was trapped on a server Serena could wipe at any moment. He needed an unimpeachable witness. He drafted an email to the head of internal audit, CCing Alina Vance. He attached the evidence of Jackson's code sabotage, with a clear, technical explanation. This appears to be deliberate system degradation post-sign-off, which explains the operational failures. I recommend immediate forensic imaging of the development server to preserve this evidence. Before he could hit send, a shadow fell across his desk. It was Sloane, her face ashen. She leaned in, whispering, "The audit lead just left Serena's office. He looked satisfied. I think she's giving him a different story, a cleaner one." A cold certainty settled over Leo. Serena would have anticipated this. She would have a justification for Jackson's access, a reason for the code. A security review gone wrong. She'd throw Jackson under the bus to save herself, and the narrative would shift to rogue employee incompetence, with her as the vigilant manager who uncovered it. Leo would still be the original failure. This would just be a tragic epilogue. He deleted the draft. He couldn't play the evidence card yet. He needed to understand her full play. He accessed the camera feed again. Serena's office was empty, but on her desk next to her monitor was a handwritten list. The camera angle was sharp enough to read. It had 2 columns. The first, names, Gabriel Vendor, Sloan Park Accounting, Michael IT Intern. The second column, single words, pressure, complicity, ignorance. She was building her roster of co-conspirators and weak links. Sloan was listed as complicity. She must have found traces of Sloan's help with the server distraction. Then his own email client pinged, an automated alert he'd set up. Someone had just tried to log into his cloud backup drive, the one holding all his email archives, from an unfamiliar IP. The attempt failed, blocked by 2-factor authentication. But it meant they'd found the vault. They were trying to destroy the archive. His time was up. Serena was moving to erase all digital traces, starting with his and fabricating her own. The hunt had become a race against digital extinction. Leo made a desperate decision. He couldn't just preserve evidence, he needed to plant a beacon. He took the most damning file, the video of the envelope exchange, and stripped its metadata. Using an anonymizing relay, he sent it not to the board, but to Jackson's personal email with a single-line message from a burner account. "She's making a list. Your name has a price next to it. The code commits are your tombstone, your move." He was lighting a fuse between his enemies. Hopping the explosion would reveal the truth. The digital bomb was launched. Leo sat back, his hands trembling slightly over the keyboard, the taste of copper and adrenaline sharp in his mouth. He had just turned the conspiracy inward. Now he waited. The charity's main office was a study in silent, seismic shift. The formal investigation notice had been posted, casting a pall of legal anxiety over the cubicles. Serena was conspicuously absent, reportedly working remotely on the audit response. Her physical vacancy made her presence loom larger, a phantom puppeteer. Leo's screen flickered. An internal system notification. Jackson Cole's access privileges have been temporarily suspended by order of internal audit. So it had begun. The fuse was burning. His phone buzzed with a direct message from Sloan, hidden in a collaborative document. Jackson just stormed into the CFO's office. Didn't look like a friendly chat. "Also, be careful. I think my machine is being monitored. Keys are lagging. Serena was tightening the noose, moving beyond lists to active surveillance. Leo felt the walls closing in, the digital and physical realms blending into a single oppressive panopticon. He needed air, a sliver of a world where the stakes were simple, petty, and smelled of raw horseradish and regret. Later that afternoon, in a small suburban park, Emma watched Mrs. Valerie, a woman whose pedagogy had been a relentless campaign of minor humiliations, stomp down the wooded path, dismissing her with a wave that was both final and insulting. The teacher's words, "We don't need to be a know-it-all," hung in the crisp air, a perfect echo of every red mark on a well-meaning essay from over a decade ago. Emma sat on the bench, the irony a bitter pill. She wasn't a vengeful person. But some wounds, however small, never quite scar over. They just learn to hum quietly. The skunk was just a fact of nature, a hazard of the trail. The choice to withhold a warning, however, that was human, that was personal. She heard it before she smelled it. A sharp, startled yelp that morphed into a strangled cry of outrage, followed by a frantic, clumsy crashing in the underbrush. Emma's lips twitched, a wholly involuntary reaction. Then the wind shifted. The odor hit her in a wave. It wasn't just foul, it was assertive. Pungent, eye-watering, a physical presence that smelled of burned rubber, rotten eggs, and that distinct, nostril-stinging tang of peeled horseradish. It was the smell of instant, undeniable karma. When Mrs. Valerie emerged from the path exit, she was a different woman. The rigid posture was gone, replaced by a hunched, shivering misery. Her expensive athleisure wear was now a biohazard suit. Her face was a mask of outrage and profound disgust, aimed squarely at Emma. "I tried to warn you about that skunk," she moaned, the sentence a masterpiece of deflection. Emma met her gaze, offering a small, noncommittal shrug. "I wagered a guess here." The passive aggression was a language they both spoke fluently. She then made a practical, merciful suggestion about the wind direction. What happened next was unexpected. Defeated, reeking, and utterly humbled, Mrs. Valerie's hostility didn't harden, it crumbled. She fished out her phone, her movements defeated. "Take my number," she muttered, the command now a plea. "Contact me when you plan to come back, preferably when I don't smell like this." Emma saved the number, a trophy of absurdity. As she walked away, leaving her former teacher to her aromatic penance, she felt no triumph, only a strange, clean closure. The universe, in its weird, stinky way, had balanced the scales. It was petty. It was perfect. Back at the charity, as dusk settled, Leo's computer chimed, an email from Jackson. The subject line, "Meeting tonight, the storage unit, alone." The storage unit, a forgotten, off-site space used for old paper archives, a place with no cameras, no network, a place for conversations that didn't exist. This was the move. Leo's beacon had drawn his target out of the shadows. He didn't know if Jackson was coming with a deal, a threat, or a fist. But he was coming, and he was coming alone. As Leo packed his bag, slipping a small voice recorder into his pocket, the office phone on his desk rang. He picked it up. "Mr. Chen," a calm, unfamiliar voice said. "This is Martin from Internal Audit. We've completed our preliminary imaging of the development server, as your earlier concerns suggested. The findings are significant. We'd like you to come in first thing tomorrow to discuss them. Please ensure you do not discuss this with anyone else tonight." They had found Jackson's sabotage. The official truth was aligning with his. But Serena's list, her pressure on Gabriel, the attempted hack on his cloud, her counteroffensive was still in motion. The battle was converging on two fronts, the official audit and the shadow war in a storage unit. Leo arrived at the dimly lit industrial park after hours. The storage unit door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling out. He took a breath and pushed it open. Jackson was inside, but he wasn't alone. Gabriel, the third-party tech, was there too, looking terrified, and standing between them holding a sleek tablet that displayed what looked like bank transfer records was a smirking Serena Blake. She looked up from the screen. "Leo, good. Now we can have a real conversation about what happens next." She had not been working remotely. She had been setting the final trap, and he had walked right into it. The storage unit smelled of dust, damp concrete, and the sharp, clean scent of Serena Blake's perfume, which felt violently out of place. The single hanging bulb illuminated three faces: Jackson's, pale and sweating; Gabriel, etched with pure fear; and Serena's, a mask of chilling composure. "You've been busy, Leo," Serena said, her voice echoing slightly in the metal-walled space. She tapped her tablet. "Trying to turn allies against each other, a clumsy tactic." Leo's hand closed around the recorder in his pocket, his thumb finding the on switch by feel. "This isn't an alliance, Serena, it's extortion." He nodded at Gabriel. "You offered him a bribe to lie, then threatened him when he hesitated." "I offered him a consulting fee for his professional assessment," she corrected smoothly. "His initial assessment, which you coerced him into signing, has caused this entire mess. He's liable. I was offering him a path to correct his statement." She shifted her gaze to Jackson. "And Jackson here was performing unsanctioned, if overzealous, security stress tests. A breach of protocol, but not malice. A misunderstanding you've twisted." She was rewriting the story in real time, assigning roles. Gabriel the coerced, Jackson the overzealous, herself the corrective manager. Leo would be the instigator, the chaotic element. "The audit has the server images," Leo stated, holding her gaze. "They see the sabotage." "They see anomalous code commits," she countered, unfazed. "The context is everything. Jackson will explain his overzealous testing. You will explain your pressure on Gabriel, and I will present a unified report to the board about a project that failed due to a perfect storm of vendor pressure and misguided initiative from junior staff. The charity moves on. Reputations are managed." Her plan was clear: a controlled demolition where everyone took a small hit, and she emerged as the stabilizing force. She would sacrifice Jackson's reputation and throw Leo to the wolves, but contain the blast radius to save herself. "And if we don't agree to your version?" Leo asked quietly. Serena's smile didn't reach her eyes. She looked at Gabriel. "Your small IT firm relies heavily on our charity's contract, doesn't it? And several others in our network. A word about ethical breaches," she turned to Jackson. "And your wife just started that lovely boutique funded by your salary. Unemployment with a black mark would be difficult." Finally, her gaze landed back on Leo. "And you, Leo, you have your evidence, I have mine. The attempted hack of the security system to spy on a colleague. The illegal recording you're making right now." Leo's blood ran cold. How did she know? "A court," she continued, "loves a messy fight, but employers don't. Who will hire you after that? It's a mutual assured destruction. Or we choose a simpler story and all walk away, bruised but walking." The ultimatum hung in the dusty air. She had calculated the cost for each of them and found their breaking points. Leo saw Gabriel's shoulders slump in defeat. Jackson looked at the floor, nodding almost imperceptibly. She had won. By thinking not in terms of truth, but in terms of tolerable loss, she had won. But a week later, in a vastly different kind of confrontation, Nathan Ford stood on the porch of the mansion that was not his, the deed to his Greytance land feeling like a live coal in his hand. The woman who called herself Susan Preston had just finished a monologue that blended Southern Belle hospitality with naked threat. Her fraudulent documents fanned out on her desk like a bad poker hand. When Nathan placed his deed atop them, the air changed. Her civility evaporated, revealing the steel beneath. Her call to the sheriff wasn't panic. It was a calculated move, the first strike in a war she was confident she'd already won through local influence and forged paperwork. Sitting in the back of the sheriff's car, the humiliating scent of the vinyl seats mixing with the lingering smell of Susan's overly sweet perfume from her tirade, Nathan's fear crystallized into a cold, clear rage. This wasn't a corporate boardroom where narratives could be spun. This was dirt, wood, and property lines. The law, for all its flaws, cared about deeds and surveys, not stories. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named Eli, met him at the county station. When shown Susan's documents, Eli's burst of laughter was the first crack in the dam of Nathan's anxiety. "This isn't a land claim," Eli chuckled. "It's a fantasy novel. The notary is her HOA lackey. The lot numbers don't correspond to the county grid. She didn't just break the law, she didn't even bother to learn it. While Susan paced her sunny porch, confident in her social sway, Eli and Nathan worked. They subpoenaed the HOA board minutes, finding votes authorizing the land appropriation that were taken without a quorum. They found the building contractor, who admitted he was paid in cash by Susan's husband. No permits needed, she said she'd handle it. They mapped the precise property lines with a county surveyor, the pink flags a stark indictment on the mansion's lawn. Susan's power was a bubble of social bullying and self-delusion. Nathan's power was a piece of paper stamped by the county recorder a generation ago. In the stark light of the courtroom, her bubble popped with an almost audible snap. The judge's ruling was a tsunami. Vacate the property, pay back taxes, fines, and demolition costs. The HOA, exposed as her personal fiefdom, revolted, ejecting her and her cronies. Standing on his now vacant land, the mansion empty, Nathan received a call from Eli. "Nathan, the development company just upped their offer. They want to fast-track the purchase, but there's a condition. Susan's husband is threatening a civil suit against you for emotional distress and loss of enjoyment. It's frivolous, but it could tie up the sale for months." The victory was complete, but the vindictiveness of the defeated was just beginning. Nathan looked at the looming, empty mansion. He hadn't just taken her home. He'd shattered her entire identity, and a person with nothing left to lose was the most dangerous kind. The threat of a civil suit was a poison pill, a final spiteful gesture meant to spoil Nathan's victory. But Eli was ready. "Let him sue," he told Nathan over the phone, his voice calm. "His emotional distress is predicated on his wife's criminal trespass and fraud. We'll countersue for legal fees and will subpoena his financials. A man who pays contractors in cash for an illegal build might have other interesting things to hide." It was a game of chicken. Within 48 hours, the husband's lawyer quietly withdrew the threat. The sale to the development company proceeded, the funds flowing into trusts for Nathan's children. The mansion was demolished, the land cleared. The legacy of Nathan's great-aunt, a woman of quiet independence, had ultimately provided a foundation for future generations. The revenge was clean, legal, and total. Back in the corporate shadow war, Leo faced a different calculus. Serena, mutual assured destruction offer in the storage unit was a standoff. But Leo had one card she hadn't accounted for: Sloane Park. While Serena focused on Leo, Jackson, and Gabriel, she'd underestimated the quiet accountant who had seen everything. Sloane, listed as complicity on Serena's handwritten list, had not been idle. Using her access to the financial backend, she had traced the consulting fee Serena offered Gabriel. It wasn't a simple transfer. It was routed through a dormant vendor account Serena controlled, one used for years to siphon off unused project funds for her discretionary budget. It was the same pattern Maya Reyes' audit had uncovered at the social agency: ghost vendors, inflated costs. Sloane compiled the financial evidence: the fake vendor, the irregular payment authorizations over the years, the link to the attempted bribe. She didn't go to HR. She went directly to Alina Vance, the board chair, and copied the head of internal audit. Her email was a masterpiece of accounting precision. No emotion, just ledger entries, payment IDs, and bank routing numbers. It proved Serena wasn't just a toxic manager covering her tracks. She was a petty embezzler using charity funds to finance her schemes and pay off accomplices. This changed everything. Sabotage and bullying were HR issues. Theft was a criminal one. The board's response was swift and merciless. Serena was summoned to a meeting not with HR, but with the charity's legal counsel and a representative from the police financial crimes unit. Her offer of a simpler story evaporated. Faced with the prospect of prosecution, she was given a single option: resign immediately, sign a comprehensive NDA admitting no wrongdoing but repaying the misappropriated funds, and never work in the nonprofit sector again. In exchange, the charity would not press charges. The official announcement cited personal reasons for her departure. The unofficial staff party, with its "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead" theme, was, for once, entirely justified. But Serena's malice, like Susan Preston's, didn't end with her defeat. True to Leo's fears, she became a ghost in the machine. She began meeting with the few remaining staff members who were either loyal or gullible, and with wealthy local donors spinning a new narrative. She was the victim of a coup by an incompetent, vengeful IT staff and a corrupt accountant. She was fishing for leverage, for a way to sue for wrongful dismissal to salvage her reputation. Leo, promoted to interim head of it to fix the shattered system, and Sloan, now leading a financial oversight committee, were warned by legal to keep meticulous records of all their work. The victory was theirs, but the air remained charged, the threat of her lingering poison a low-grade hum in their lives. Months later, as Leo was finalizing the new, stable website launch, he received a LinkedIn message. It was from Maya Reyes, the social worker from Part 1. "I saw the trade news about your charity's successful digital overhaul. Congratulations. I'm consulting now, helping organizations build ethical workplaces. I also heard through the grapevine about your previous manager. I might have some relevant information about her past. She applied for a director role here years ago. The references she gave were fake. I have the proof. If she's still causing trouble, it might help finally silence her." The separate threads of revenge were about to intertwine. The network of the wronged was connecting, and Serena Blake's past was closing in to meet her present. The LinkedIn message from Maya Reyes was a key sliding into a long-locked door. Leo stared at it, a slow wave of vindication washing over the chronic anxiety that had become his baseline. Serena's entire career was a matryoshka doll of fraud, each layer a smaller, uglier deception. He forwarded the message to a leaner Vance and internal audit with a simple note. For the permanent file. It was the final nail. Any legal action Serena threatened would now open an inquiry into her entire professional history. The ghost was finally laid to rest. With the website stable and his team thriving, Leo found the courage to do what he'd dreamed of since the grievance process began. He resigned. He used his enhanced reputation and a severance package to launch his own ethical tech consultancy, with Sloan as his first partner. Their founding principle was transparency. No ghost vendors, no hidden agendas. The revenge had birthed something better. Nathan Ford's cleared land was now a thriving extension of the housing development. A small plaque at the entrance of a new playground read, "In memory of Althea Ford," his great-aunt. Her legacy wasn't a lonely plot of woods, but a place for children to laugh. The money was secure, the lawsuit a forgotten bluff. He had turned predation into provision. And in a quiet office kitchen, the final petty justice unfolded. Jordan was tired of the mystery, tired of the violated Tupperware, tired of the shared indignation in the break room that never led to action. Management's emails were useless. So Jordan engineered a solution that was less about punishment and more about behavioral psychology. The lunch brick was born. 6 tiny, clear containers meticulously filled, grains, protein, veg, sauce, 2 for toppings, all bound tightly into a monolith with intricate crosshatches of blue painter's tape. The message on top was a masterstroke of passive-aggressive bureaucracy. If opened, must be retaped identically to maintain food safety seal. It was a fortress of inconvenience. The first day, the thief, someone bold enough to rifle through containers but too lazy to cook, had attempted an assault. Jordan returned to find the tape slashed, the little containers scattered in the fridge like discarded toys, but the food itself untouched. The effort-to-reward ratio had been disrupted. The second day, the brick stood untouched, a silent monument to thwarted entitlement. By the end of the week, Jordan's meals were no longer targeted. The thief had moved on to easier prey. But curiosity gnawed at Jordan. Using the excuse of a lost lunch bag, Jordan politely asked the office manager to review the kitchen nook camera for a specific Tuesday afternoon. The grainy, silent footage revealed the truth. At 1:15 p.m. after the lunch rush, Mr. Henderson, the genial cardigan-wearing head of HR, the man who had sent all those "let's respect each other" emails, ambled in. He opened the fridge, his eyes scanning. He bypassed the labeled sandwiches, ignored the salads. His hand went straight for Jordan's then unsecured container of rosemary garlic chicken and roasted potatoes. He lifted the lid, sniffed, used a fork from his office to steal a few perfect bites, and then replaced the lid, arranging it carefully to look undisturbed. Jordan didn't feel anger, only a profound, satisfying clarity. The hypocrisy was so perfect it was almost artistic. Confrontation would cause nuclear drama. So Jordan simply doubled down on the lunch brick strategy, becoming its evangelist. Soon, others in the office, tired of their own losses, adopted their own versions: complex knots of string, elaborate lockboxes, decoy containers of dubious leftover stew. The theft ceased entirely. Mr. Henderson was never named, never shamed. He was simply rendered powerless by a collective, clever inconvenience. He had tried to take a little piece of something that wasn't his, and in response, an entire office quietly, politely walled him out. It was a victory not of conflict, but of sheer, brilliant nuisance. Leo stands at the window of his new, sunlit consultancy office, looking out at the city. On his desk, a framed photo of his old charity team has been replaced by one of his new partners, Sloan included, laughing. His phone buzzes. It's a text from an unknown number. "Leo, it's Maya. I heard you started your own firm. I have a client, a women's shelter whose database was deliberately crippled by a disgruntled ex-board member. They need someone who understands more than code. They need someone who understands sabotage. Interested." A slow smile spreads across his face. He types back, "Tell me everything." The cycle wasn't ending. It was evolving. From revenge to justice to a profession, the victims had become the experts. From corporate takedowns to skunk-themed karma, which victory felt the most satisfying? Was it Leo's digital detective work, Nathan's legal bulldozing, or Jordan's brilliantly petty lunch fortress? Rank them 1-3 in the COMMENTS.